Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second webinar of Nature Positive University's webinar series that we're running in 2024. So just to begin with, a hello and a welcome to everybody who's joining. We're obviously catering for our Eastern Hemisphere friends, our Western Hemisphere friends, sorry. I always get my East and West mixed up this afternoon, but we are going to be recording this webinar so that it can go onto YouTube so that anybody can watch it back. So please do be aware that we will be recording. I think we can have the next slide, please, Holly. So just to begin, Nature Positive Universities started in 2021 as a collaboration between researchers at the University of Oxford and UNEP to try and form a race to net zero style movement, but for the higher education sector's biodiversity impact, and that's supported by the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. We launched with our founding members and the pledge at COP15 in Montreal in 2022. And we know higher education has a massive biodiversity footprint, from the food eaten on campuses, to the land and the buildings, to the paper and the lab equipment. It all adds up and it needs to be dealt with. That's why our 4-step pledge commits member universities to calculate their biodiversity baseline impact on nature, and then turn these into measurable targets, specific actions using our 4Rs framework: refrain, reduce, restore, renew, and then finally, publicly report progress so we can lead by example. And we also have a student ambassadors program to encourage students to get involved in nature restoration and support their universities to start nature positive journeys. Our students help us seize urgency and push their institutions to be more ambitious, and they can get involved practically with biodiversity surveys, creating new habitats and sharing their experience with a global network of students on campuses across the world. So today's webinar is all about trying to assess that baseline and measuring biodiversity on campus. And then we can use that to undertake actions, which is our webinar that will be next week. But if we have the next slide. So I'm Henry Grubb. I'm a PhD student at Imperial College London, and I'm working as a research associate with the University of Oxford on Nature Positive Universities. And then our other two hosts today are Emily Stott. Emily, if you'd like to say a little bit about hello and who you are.
Hi, yeah, it's great to see you all. I'm coordinator based at University of Oxford, and just to say we'd be delighted to welcome you to join our community and work towards making a nature positive pledge, share your actions and give you any help and support we can. So just get in touch if there's anything else you'd like to know about our programme.
And then our other host is, of course, Holly Thompson. Hello, Holly.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I am a project assistant. I also work at the University of Oxford supporting Emily and the Nature Positive Universities team.
If you're already part of a university that's a pledged member, then we hope that this webinar is going to provide inspiration for how you can move your nature positive journey forward. But we, of course, also want more universities to take the pledge and sign up. So do take a look at our website so that you know how to make a pledge, and anyone can get in touch with Holly and Emily to ask questions and follow up about the pledge or about the Student Ambassador Programme. And I'm sure that there are many other people in the webinar as well who might not be associated with the university. We hope that you can take something away from this webinar as well. So if we take the next slide, our speakers today, hopefully that is what this is, yes. We have two fantastic speakers from universities in the Americas, or universities and colleges in the Americas. Our first speaker will be Thalita Dalbelo. So she's the urban architect and sustainability coordinator at Unicamp in Campinas. And then our second speaker will be Katherine Collin, who is the sustainability major coordinator and the project lead of the Campus Biodiversity Network at Vanier College in Montreal in Canada. Our first speaker is going to be Thalita. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Thalita. So if Holly, you stop sharing, and then Thalita can start sharing her slides. As we go through the presentation, please do put questions in the chat. We are more than happy. We'll have a Q&A after Thalita has spoken. So please put your questions in the chat and I can ask them at the end. So without further ado, that's looking good.
Is it all right?
It looks okay. Can you make it full screen, Thalita?
Yes, I'm trying. Sorry. Yes, okay.
There we go. Brilliant. Take it away.
So, hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Emily, Holly, and Harry, for the invitation. And thank you, Katherine, for being my webinar partner. I am very happy to be here today to present this important project for our university, and hope it can be replied at yours. The project is the Unicamp ecological corridor. Just for you to know, we are at the University of Campinas in Brazil, the state of São Paulo. This red line, the dark red, is the metropolitan area of Campinas. The light red is the Campinas municipality. The orange line is the HIDS, the Hub for Sustainable Development, that I will talk a little bit about it. And the yellow ones is the university campuses. And today we are talking about this campus, that is the Zeferino Vaz campus. Sorry. So the University of Campinas was founded in 1966. We had 6 campuses, 24 schools, 4 hospitals, 2 technical high schools, 30 libraries, more than 21,000 undergraduate students, more than 17,000 graduate students, something about 2,000 professors, and 6,800 staff members. The Zeferino Vaz campus has 3.8 million square meters of total area, and the building area is something about 600,000 square meters. The planted vegetation is 708,000 square meters, and the forest vegetation 480,000 square meters. And this is what we are talking today. Just a little bit about our history in thinking about the territorial planning. In 1966, the main concern of our planners was the use and occupation of the land and the future constructions. So they didn't have the issues of the environmental categories we have here. So the campus project is clearly designed for people, but disregarded the presence of the streams and the fragmented vegetation in this area. So as a result, the present vegetation today is composed of fragmented and unconnected remnants, and the fauna is exposed to roadkills. Since 2009, Unicamp has been carrying out environmental recovery plans aimed to establish this connecting. And in 2013, we acquired the Argentina farm, that is a big land connected to our campus. That is our campus too right now. The evolution of the sustainability at the university starts in 2003 with the waste management group, and the evolution is during these years, and the coordination of sustainability that I'm coordinating, it was founded in 2022, and we are monitoring our sustainability indicators since 2018. The project proceedings that I think is very important to say here is we have a high incidence rate of accidents involving campus wildlife. So we have some projects to minimize the impacts of the presence of wildlife in our campus. These projects this preceding project was the coordination of the Animal Monitoring Center. So we have the community awareness, the specific warning road signs, the physical barriers to protect the preservation areas. Here in Brazil, we have the preservation areas that's named APP or APA, and all the streams need to have these preservation areas, its own law, on regulations, municipalities at estadual or federal level. We have this law to guide our implementation. So we also have the feasibility study for the implementation of fauna underground passages in the project proceedings. This is our wildlife survey on campus. So we have two different surveys. We have the animal roadkills during this year since 2005 until 2020. A lot of mammals and a lot of birds too. And some sighted animals we have too. Of course, this is the local wildlife fauna, so I think you don't know some of these animals, but I can tell you if you permit. In 2021, the High Administrative University take this project like a strategic project. So we have a budget of the High Administrative. And the main goal of this project is to connect the conservation areas and the compensation polygons. The compensation polygons is something like native forest that is established by law. And of the campus de Ferino Vaz and Fazenda Argentina, the Argentina farm, you know, and to each other and between the vegetation fragments in the area outside the campus, allowing the gene flow of fauna and flora through the construction of wildlife passages, planting with the restoration project, and maintenance of vegetation in the ecological corridors, as well as their fencing and sign. So I think you can have this picture and pay attention in the design of the corridors, because this is the initial project, and now we have a bigger project. In numbers and some quality indicators, we will have the reduction of the degree of isolation of areas of remaining vegetation, the improvement of gene flow through seed dispersal, survival of territorial species, and increased survival rate of animal and plant species, the reduction of animals being run over at intersections between wildlife tunnels and the road system, the improvement of sustainability indicators, like the sustainability indicators related to the environmental preservation and conservation. So to this project, we have 217 square meters of ecological corridors, 92 meters of wildlife tunnels, like in some, and 6,500 of fencing, and 300,000 square meters of forest plantation. All these in 5 years, and with the budget of 6.5 million reais. It's like $1.3 million. This is the localization of overhead and underground wildlife passages. So we have 9, because we have a lot of streets and roads between the disconnected lines. And this is some examples of we we are thinking to have. We also had a field survey, and you can find it in this link. So please, if you can access after. And today, the project status is we outsourced the hiring of executive project for the wildlife passages because we need a civil engineering executive project, and outsourced the hiring of executive project for the ecological restoration, including the buffer zones. So if you remember the last map, now we have this. This is the current delimitation with wider passages, and with the buffer zones in dark green, we have the corridors that will fence, and in light green, we have the buffer zones. For the buffer zones, we are planning to have the agroforestry systems, a low impact management, living lab, a lot of living labs, and the photovoltaic power generation upside some plantations. For the next steps, we need to have the planning of our monitoring. And all this project have some difficulties and some happy things happening. So the manager of this project is here. I am the manager, and here the sustainability office is an office related to the University Department of Strategic Planning. So we are just closer to the rectory, you know. Here we have architect and urban planner, civil engineer, and 2 geographers being part of this work group. Also, we have the environmental division with 1 forestry engineer and 1 vegetarian of the Animal Monitoring Center. We also have 2 professors in this work group. 1 is from the Biology Institute, and 1 is from the Civil Engineering, Architecture, and Urban Planning faculty. And we also have the stakeholders, because we need to contact and to manage all people around us, so our neighbors. And we need to manage the regulations that is inside the municipality. So I used to say we have 4 different scales here. We have the scale of the university, the scale of HITS, that is a big project involving the territorial planning of a technological pole. We have the municipality scale that creates and monitor the urban regulations, and that is responsible to say to the other owners, to our neighbors, what they need to do. We have the scale of the university, HIDS, municipality, and the scale of state, the metropolitan region. So we need to manage all the interests. At the HIDS scale, we have this map. The red line is the border of the HIDS project, and the yellow area is our campuses. So we are just inside this area, and I think I didn't say before, but we are connecting the preservation area of the stream, named Anhumas, the Anhumas stream, to this big remnant vegetation that's called the Mata de Santa Genebrinha. You know, and we are doing this connective line. This is very important for all animals to have this connected. So we have this project in a city scale, because the city has the Green City Plan of Campinas with all these connective and influence areas, and established in 2019. We are here in this red cycle. So we are just inside this project, and they have a lot of goals that is pretty like yours, to promote conditions for the maintenance of local fauna and conservation of genetic diversity, the recovery of preservation areas, springs, and formation of ecological corridors, and the strength of existing protected areas and creation of new protected areas. And this is the project in the metropolitan area scale. So we also have the connective areas, and our project is here too. So we are having this project in this scale that's not so small, but is inside the big scale in the metropolitan area. I think that's it. This is our desired image for future, for our streams. This is the human streams. So I think that's it. Some references and my contact. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Thalita. That's fantastic. Fantastic to see what you've been doing and how you set that up and the stakeholders you've been working with. That's been super interesting. There are a couple of questions in the chat that I'll just I'll ask you. If anybody else has any other questions, please do put them in. Luisa Sarmiento asks, could you elaborate a bit more on the indicators that you used to monitor your biodiversity?
Oh, yeah, sure. So today we have just the areas of planted vegetation, of forest vegetation, and of the project future planted areas. For the animals, we don't have any kind of numbers today, just for the roadkills that I presented to you. So all the monitoring process of the fauna need to be planned. We don't have this planning right now, and I think we are going to have something like cameras with sensor of presence of animals, but this is just a thought right now.
So Holly Gordon also asks us a similar question about the process. What was the process for establishing the list of fauna, and how often do you survey? So I suppose if you're working on roadkill, can you explain a little bit about how that data is collected and how often it is collected and things like that?
Yes, well, we have the Center of Animal Monitoring and the veterinarian. So anytime when an animal suffers some accident, they call to the veterinarian, and this veterinarian go to the local and have oh, I'm sorry. the proceedings, you know.
So going forward into the future, I suppose you would hope that roadkill numbers are going to go down, and so your monitoring is going to go down. So what do you think will be the best way, maybe in the future, to keep monitoring, but also, you know, obviously not relying on things like roadkill?
Oh, I think we have here the geoprocessing coordination. So I think the better way is to have the sensors, the camera sensors with presence of animals directly integrated to the geoprocessing system, so we can have the animals at the perfect time, at the perfect location, and have this monitoring. I think this is the better way.
Thanks, Thalita. And then last question from now, we'll have Marufa Sultana asks in the chat. They're curious to know what approaches you considered to decide on the buffer selection of corridors.
I'm sorry, to decide?
To decide where your buffer strips are for the corridors.
Oh, the buffer zones. So, we take some references, some studies, and have the 50 meters, like a good buffer zone to protect the fenced area, the corridor, the ecological corridor area. So we have this, and we presented this area to the group that are planning, that have the territorial planning of the HIDs. And they said, okay, it's all right for us to have 6 meters, both sides of the ecological corridor. So that's it, just based on reference, studies, and researchers.
Thank you, Thalita. Please stay on the call and have a listen to our next speaker, which is Katherine Collin from Vanier College in Montreal. So we'll switch over now. And Katherine, if you'd like to share your screen.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me okay. So it's my pleasure today to speak to you regarding some initiatives that we have on a much smaller scale than that really impressive overview that we've just heard on our college campus in Montreal. We are part of the NPU Alliance, 11 universities and 2 colleges in the lead up to COP15, as Henry mentioned, signed high-level administrative pledges to become NPU institutions. And ways in which we are currently working across these 13 colleges to address biodiversity loss is through varied initiatives such as ecological restoration, internal biodiversity inventories, development of strat plans for biodiversity, bioblitzes, and responsible suppliers' codes of conduct for mitigating biodiversity loss. So our principles guiding our approach here at Vanier to campus biodiversity monitoring are threefold. We abide by the notion that urban patches and small-scale green spaces, typical of city-centered campuses, have value. We also promote the idea that the community is more engaged when biodiversity data is accessible and updated in real time. This is an issue that some of our institutions have where there is a lot of internal facing documentation, but not necessarily external facing documentation. So we abide by that principle that our biodiversity data should, as best possible, be accessible, and that collective efforts count, that everyone on our campus, regardless of discipline or position at the college or within the community, can contribute to participatory science. Sorry. So we know, I'm sure I don't need to repeat for the audience today the benefits of observing biodiversity and nature on campus. We've really tried to position this in terms of the health of our students and community. And we see increased attentiveness, increased critical reasoning, lowered levels of stress for our students, and importantly, increased community cohesion. And as well, we know the value of an increased sense of awe. So keeping health in mind, trying to create a connection to biodiversity and green space in urban settings, we remember that protecting biodiversity is also protecting ourselves. And this idea of valuing our campus green spaces may indeed have corollary benefits for ecosystemic effects, such as countering heat islands. We see our tiny little patch of green in the midst of this somewhat remarkable heat island on the island of Montreal in Quebec. In addition to these health benefits, we know that our campus monitoring has tangible benefits for conservation. And the observations that we make that reach what is called a research grade observation level is these are transmitted to the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. We can identify status species that we find on our campuses. We can document and report invasive species. And I'll just linger for 2 quick moments over the references that I've included here. We know, keeping in line with the previous presentation, that fragmentation is an ever-present risk. And we know as well that small patches have value for connectivity, particularly in urban settings. We also know, interestingly, that campus biodiversity is important for urban biodiversity. We have this really interesting study that's come out of Spain this past summer, showing that university campuses hold a higher taxonomic diversity than other urban areas. So all the more reason to pay attention to our biodiversity on our campuses. So the basic level of participation that we have in our campus biodiversity monitoring, we consider it in 3 to 4 different areas. We have individual observations. These are when anybody from the community participates in unstructured biodiversity monitoring at their own pace. We then have the campus project where participants can see observations reflected in compiled, consolidated data for our campus. And then we have the campus network project, which ties us to other institutions and gives us a snapshot of all of the biodiversity that we're observing across different campuses. And I'll just add the additional project that dovetails into this, the level of observation, is when faculty members set up a specific course through an iNaturalist project and are monitoring biodiversity within the class. All of those observations are going to count for our campus, but they're course specific. So we have these different levels of participation in our campus biodiversity monitoring. So how does community biodiversity monitoring work for us? It's very simple, and you'll hear me repeat this a couple times in the next few slides. We use the free educational non-commercial application iNaturalist, which is a global tool. It's available in, I believe, 12 different country or regional hubs across the world. We have an iNaturalist Canada. There's also iNaturalist UK and iNaturalist in New Zealand as well, I believe. It consists quite simply in students downloading, or anyone from the community downloading, the free app to their phone and finding biodiversity on campus, wild species on campus, taking a picture and uploading the observation. And what's interesting is that we will have non-experts participating in doing our biodiversity monitoring. So consisting again of finding wildlife, taking a picture, and sharing the observation through the app. We will then have experts and other members of the community science realm in iNaturalist identifying and validating or correcting these observations. And so again, the tools could not be simpler. These are available to everyone wherever you are. Again, completely non-commercial and free. It does require participants to create an account. And students who may not be inclined to make observations through a cell phone, which is often the easiest means of recording these observations, may also upload their observations, their photos, evidence-based observations, to a browser through a computer, so inaturalist.org. Save and upload, and then you wait to have your observation confirmed. So which types of species can be observed? We remind everyone that we're looking for wild plants and animals. In our urban campus spaces, often we will have plantings, and those are not to be included, but all of the biodiversity that would be attracted to our plantings are included. Signs of wild plants and animals microorganisms. We have photos of animal tracks, nests, bones, feathers, seed pods, dead leaves. These are all signs of biodiversity and can be counted. Recordings as well, audio recordings of animal calls and bird songs. iNaturalist will not suggest identifications for those like iNaturalist will for other species, but those recordings count as well. What we don't want to include in iNaturalist observations on our campuses are cultivars, so things that we have planted. As I mentioned, the interactions of biodiversity with those plantings are, of course, admissible. Crops, pets, people, and inorganic material is to be avoided. I've provided a snapshot here of what an individual's iNaturalist observations look like, of course, very based in Montreal, as you see with the snow. And you'll see that there are different levels of observation. We won't go into too much detail here, but all of the observations that have a green bar underneath them are observations that have reached research grade, meaning that 2/3 of the identifiers, the people evaluating this observation, have reached consensus that that is indeed the correct species. And corrections can take place over quite a long period of time and engender interesting discussion. You also see in the middle tracks of coyote and whitefoot mouse that have not been validated. These are likely because the participant did not establish a reliable measure of size. So we always encourage students to go out with a glove or a ruler or a coin, anything to be able to give a good indication of size in the field. And then you'll see in the middle of the screen here, the catnip, and catnip was planted. And underneath that, you'll see it's not very clear, but it's written casual. And informal observation means that that's planted. It's not going to be transmitted for biodiversity research internationally, but we can still document it and look at the species that interact with that plant on our campus. So we moved from the individual into our campus collection project. Here is Vanier College's collection project on iNaturalist. You'll see that the banner was designed by a student reflecting the integration of campus wildlife into a building that has stained glass. So we see different species that we have commonly on campus. We're also very lucky to have a field station. I know not many campuses have moose on them, but we have a field station in the Laurentian forest. And you'll see the statistics that are generated for this project. We can document the number of people who are observing and the number of species. Our campus projects are facilitated by boundaries that we set up and submit to iNaturalist. These are boundaries that are created in key markup language, if you want to be technical. And because of the geolocated nature of our projects, this enables anybody who is simply wandering on campus and is using the app iNaturalist to be able to document biodiversity. Many of these people may not even know that we have a project running, but because they are using the community science tool iNaturalist, their observations are counted. And we have helped scores of other colleges and universities set up their own campus boundaries under our Campus Biodiversity Network project, and we're happy to do that for any college and university attending today. More on that in a moment. So on our campus, we have a self-guided nature walk. So many of our observations are taking place around this nature walk, where we've put up informative panels with a QR code for people to learn more about the species and the community science platforms that we have for making those observations. And from this project, we're able to get a preliminary profile of our campus biodiversity. And again, as we saw earlier, we have this snapshot of campus biodiversity tallied by species, by observation, observer, and identifiers. And just a note to interested colleges and universities that historical data can be added, provided that there's evidence, a photo, a recording, historical observations can be added going years back to contribute to your campus biodiversity profile, which is what we've done at Vanier as well. We also have observations that are related to status species on campus. So we have the endangered monarch butterfly, and for the southern Quebec, the brown snake, Stauroideaceae, is endangered. We also see that our campus biodiversity observations are being transmitted to the Global Biodiversity Information Facility and currently being used for research. This is one study that came out this past fall, looking at sampling insufficiency and sufficiency on the island of Montreal. And we see that Vanier College, because of our observations in our project, is the only post-secondary institution represented here. So that's exciting. We also, in the third prong of this, we also provide a first of its kind collective snapshot of biodiversity for multiple campuses. As of this past week, we have 6,000 observers, over 65,000 observations, and over 6,000 species that have been documented throughout all the campuses that are involved. And this is through what is called an umbrella project. It's a project on iNaturalist that includes a variety of institutions. This project has been supported and promoted by the NPU Alliance, for which we're very grateful. It's based on iNaturalist as a platform. And importantly, it's not intended to replace exhaustive ecological studies for our campus spaces, but to enhance them and supplement them. We see that leaderboards in such a project really drive student engagement. So it's nice to see different campuses and their placement internationally. And again, we have these really impressive numbers of the power of our university and college spaces to make these observations. Importantly, for administrators who might be attending today, such a project like the iNaturalist Collection Project, both at the intercollegiate level and the collection project for our college, enables us to track engagement and to have some metrics on how many people are getting out making biodiversity observations. We see the number of observations really skyrocket over the past 3-4 years. And importantly, the number is potentially less impressive when it comes to the amount of observations that are being made as to the amount of species. We see currently on this small little tract of urban green space, we have documented over 700 species. And we also know the power of this engagement that cuts across disciplines, de-silos across different institutional sectors, and can be applied in both a curricular and co-curricular realm. Quick additional benefits we see, apart from these institutional benefits for metrics, we see additional community benefits of getting involved. Our students who get kind of keyed into making biodiversity observations will go out and become essentially ambassadors for biodiversity in the broader community, contributing to conservation efforts, and even helping set up biodiversity profiles on iNaturalist for the municipalities in which our college is located. We see here documenting an invasive species in southern Quebec, the emerald ash borer, as well as a community member making their first observation of a great horned owl thanks to a student. Finally, we found that bioblitzes like the City Nature Challenge really enrich our biodiversity profiles while engaging students in the broader community. A bioblitz is, of course, a time-limited biodiversity observation event. We participate annually in the Défi Naturel Urbain City Nature Challenge for Greater Montreal. And this is an event that we have encouraged the campuses with which we've been working to get involved in terms of organizing. I know there may be a variety of campuses represented today who are helping to participate in the City Nature Challenge. These bioblitzes that run at the end of every April throughout the world are really helping carve out a place for the power of our university campuses and the way that we can mobilize our communities to start to observe biodiversity and record that biodiversity in a meaningful way. So here are some projects that are coming up for the April 26th to April 29th City Nature Challenge. There are over 500 cities. For the first time, that 500 city threshold has been reached. Through the City Nature Challenge, we have country-specific projects. So Canada will have over 40 cities represented. And then if ever your campus is in a city that is not represented on the City Nature Challenge list, it's not too late to sign up for the following year. You can also have students or community members participate in the global project. That's for observers who are without registered cities. So just in closing, I hope I'm within my time limit, and I'll just share this brief video with you. Hopefully the sound comes through, showing a brief overview of our campus biodiversity monitoring.
The City Nature Challenge is an annual 4-day competition where cities across the globe compete to document as many species of local wildlife as possible, with the goal of protecting urban biodiversity. While the challenge typically takes place in the spring, you can contribute to conservation efforts in your community any time of the year. To participate, all you need to do is get outside and photograph plants and animals using the iNaturalist app. The photos uploaded to iNaturalist are then identified, analyzed, and used for scientific research on common, threatened, and invasive species. Once you've downloaded the iNaturalist app and created an account, you're ready to make your first observation. But first, a few guidelines. It's discouraged to submit photos of houseplants, garden plants, pets, and humans, as these don't count towards biodiversity data. With that in mind, tap Observe to open the camera. You can take a photo, upload an image from your library, or record audio. The app will then analyze your image and suggest a list of species to choose from. You can also identify the species manually. Before posting, you can add your observation to a campus-specific project. When created from within the designated geographic region, your post is added automatically. Every year, engagement on iNaturalist and participation in the City Nature Challenge grows. In 2023, Montreal placed first nationally by number of participants, with nearly 500 people logging over 7,000 observations of urban wildlife over the 4-day challenge.
Campus Biodiversity Network, in conjunction with Technopark Oiseau, is thrilled to have been able to organize for a second consecutive year the City Nature Challenge for Greater Montreal. Thanks to all who participated.
Be sure to stay tuned for next year's challenge in April, and in the meantime, get outside and start documenting the biodiversity on your campus. The City Nature Challenge is an annual...
Sorry, so I'll just close. Apologies for that. I'll just close by encouraging you to reach out if you have questions. You can reach out directly through the Campus Biodiversity Network.org site. We also have a French interface, so biodivercampus.org. And of course, I'm happy to set up Zooms with anybody who's interested in coming on board for that or needing some advice about getting a collection project started at your campus. Thank you for your attention and time today.
Thank you so much, Katherine, and bang on time. Well done. We've got plenty of questions in the chat, so I'll start off with a question from Holly Gordon, who actually asks, why just limit it to wild species on iNaturalist? Do you have a separate tracking document for the landscape that you have planted on campus, or why just stick with wild species?
Yeah, so the principle of iNaturalist is to really promote wild species for international research. But we have found it very useful to actually document the cultivated species that we put, say, in our pollinator gardens, and to track biodiversity interactions, so pollinator interactions with those species. It also helps us, to look at the timing of flowering on campus. Phenologies seem to be changing a little bit in the world of climate change, and following the phenology information that we get from iNaturalist for our cultivated species is also very interesting for landscape management. So it's possible to document your cultivated plantings, but it's not contributing to global biodiversity research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Luisa Sarmiento also then asks, can you talk a little bit more about how you interact with the 13 colleges within the network? Do you regularly meet and share support and advances? And how does the communication work between you?
Yes, so we have different levels of participation. Right now, there are about 70 institutions that are waiting to come on board total. And we are hoping to set up a community of practice to share ways of using iNaturalist for advanced studies on our college campuses, just best practices, tips for getting students engaged. That community of practice will hopefully come out in the next year. In Southern Quebec, we have 6 college campuses that have put up nature walks and are following the same kind of pattern that I shared with you for our nature walk. So we have on the ground nature walks that are dovetailing with this project. And interestingly, for the NPU institutions, there's an initiative that's underway right now in Quebec to try and organize our plantings in function of biodiversity. So some common shared document that will help us manage our landscape practices better for biodiversity together.
Sean Brady asks, what level of training do you give to the iNaturalist users and how?
Yeah, so we'll do a review. We have entomologists, wildlife ecologists who are on the project and reminding participants of best practices for making observations. Not all taxa necessarily lend themselves well to this kind of unstructured observation. Some insect, like invertebrate observations, take much closer analysis than what you would be able to get with a cell phone. But we try to give students guidelines on what to look for in different species, how to photograph species, and to not generate what we call fluff data, where students may just feel the need to validate other people's observations or submit, say, 10 pictures of a dandelion because they're interested in the leaderboard. We try to rein in that activity to show that really we want to generate valuable scientific data from these encounters and show the power of our green spaces on our college campuses.
So that actually leads me nicely into a question from Una Kimura, who is a master's student at the University of Manchester doing a project on increasing student engagement with biodiversity on campus. But they said that one of the challenges that they found is that students without any background knowledge in taxonomy at all tend to find it difficult even to make an initial identification even before it gets research graded. So have you faced any similar issues? And do you how do you tackle those issues? Or other students that are partaking in those observations already got some very basic knowledge of taxonomy?
Yeah, so we like to think of the transfer of knowledge as being student driven. So we have in the works, we have students who will be leading the nature walks rather than faculty leading them, and students being able to show other students that initially it may seem difficult, but after a few weeks of doing intensive observations, your skills at making those observations will improve. We also reassure students that they're not expected to know everything when they come in, that there's a world of community science experts who can validate and refine observations, and that it's always better to be as specific as possible, as confident as possible, but not to be afraid of being corrected. And that's a learning moment for some students who feel that they are on the spot to have to be right on the first go, and iNaturalist builds in that kind of correction into the platform.
Thank you, Katherine. I was also going to ask, from my own perspective, I wanted to know sort of what's the profile of the students who are getting involved with it, and how enthusiastic are they? Is this all sort of science students and biology students who are really interested, and then your engineering students are not particularly interested in this sort of thing?
No, I think this is the most exciting part of a community science tool like this, is that we really see people getting very enthusiastic across the disciplines. The workshops that we run for, say, tracking on campus, bird sound identification on campus, they cut across all sectors of our college. Music students, computer science students. Yes, we have our biology and environmental science students, but it's almost as if everybody in, at least in the metropolitan setting of Montreal, is eager for that nature fix, that nature connection, and having that afforded on campus provides people a means of of engaging whatever their discipline is. So we're really seeing it cut across disciplines in unexpected and inspiring ways.
Mm-hmm. Karen Oberer asks, is there a way to know if any of the observers within your boundary are non-Vanier College, not members of Vanier College community, and which ones are, so that you can sort of figure out who, from the reporting perspective, who's contributing data that is in part of Vanier College and who isn't, but is still contributing data, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Because the unstructured nature of these observations, anybody coming onto campus space, and this is true for any geolocated polygon, will be able to make that observation. The way we work around that is by running signups for our BioBlitzes, so that we have hundreds of students and community staff or faculty members sign up directly. We also have members only dedicated projects that run, say, through classes and other departments, where we have a list of all of those students that are participating. But you're right, any unstructured observation can be by a passersby, and that can count. So we can disambiguate that data a little bit with a primary list of those people who have participated in the past, but it's not always obvious.
Thanks, Katherine. We're going to start wrapping up now. There was another question from Himalatha about a question maybe for Emily, if Emily can speak quickly about, do we have any resources or slide decks that we can use to present on monitoring biodiversity to our university members? Emily?
Hi, Henry, thank you. Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think Katherine will be happy to share her slides, which have a lot of information and a great first step using iNaturalist and citizen science approaches. Another resource is our last webinar, which featured University of Melbourne, and I think the kind of methods that they used and the indicators that they chose to use on their campus in Melbourne are quite useful. Following that, we're also developing some more guidance, which will be coming soon, looking at a variety of methods for campus biodiversity recording across our Nature Positive Universities network. So yeah, feel free to be in touch with us, and we can send you some of those.
Thank you, Emily. So for everybody who's attended, thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much, of course, to Thalita and to Katherine, our speakers today. Fantastic examples of work that's being done in Canada and in Brazil that we can hopefully use as inspiration for our own universities. If you're representing a university that isn't yet a Nature Positive Universities member, then please do get in touch with us and visit our website. We'd love to have more university members. And I hope that everybody might be able to take some opportunity to share some feedback. There's a link here on the screen and a QR code as well, a very short feedback survey if you'd like to be able to do that. Our next webinar is next month. We're shifting over to accommodate the Eastern Hemisphere this time, so it will be at 9 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and that will all be about action that we can take on our universities on our university campuses to try and boost biodiversity on campuses. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I think that's time now for the end of the webinar, so I'm going to say thank you very much and goodbye.